Thank you so much, Steph. The province this week imposing a second state of emergency and a stay-at-home order, I should say, is now in effect. But some claim the Premier's explanation of what is considered an essential reason for leaving home is unclear, and that includes some city officials. Mayor John Tory joins me now. Mayor, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mel.
We apologize for our French earlier. I hope that you can speak a little bit better, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. But I want to get your take.
The Premier was right. It's restez à la maison, stay home.
Restez à la maison.
You don't need a lot of French to understand that.
Restez à la maison. Yeah, see, we had it wrong. I want to get your take on this enforcement. We had a big conversation this morning in our Sound Off segment where people called in and wrote about how bylaw officers are going to be able to do this. Are you getting any further guidance? Are you hearing from officials about further guidance on how this is all going to play out?
Well, but that was the whole point. Let me just go through three things. First, the fundamental advice people need to worry about most is please stay home. That is true. That if they just really fall on that as the default position so that if they're in any doubt, they stay home, that's going to help a lot with the virus. Secondly, what we were concerned about yesterday, there's a lot of people that are worried out there. People were worried, well, if I go, for example, to pick up my mother to take her to a medical appointment, is that somehow going to be, offside the stay-at-home order? And in fact, when you read the regulations, which we didn't have until late last night, it's okay if you go and take your mother to a medical appointment. That's specifically provided for here. And then the third point, of course, was yesterday when they asked the question of us at the news conference, well, what's the strategy on enforcement here? You can't offer an opinion on what you're going to enforce if you don't know what it is, and if you don't know that it's okay for somebody to take their mother to a medical appointment. And so we now have the regulations, and that's a good thing, remembering that the default position is stay home. But we now know, for example, everything from taking your mother to a medical appointment, taking the dog for a walk. I've got all kinds of pages of stuff here. Going to the airport is exempt. If you're going to the airport to take a flight somewhere, you're not supposed to be traveling, but if you are, that's okay. We have all the construction rules. So, for example, to the point that Frankie was making earlier on, if you're working on an electricity plant, because that's deemed to be important, or a petrochemical plant, that construction's okay. So you don't have to worry if you're a worker there or if you're the owner of the construction company that you're breaking the law. But again, the fundamental core of this thing, and I'll read you the words, every person shall remain in their residence at all times unless leaving their place of residence is necessary for one of the following purposes. And there's 5 pages of purposes. And they're all things that are understood. Going to the pharmacy to get a prescription, going to pick up food. You could even go to a second residence if you have one, a cottage, but you can only go for 1 day or 14 days. Like, in other words, you quarantine yourself for 14 days or you can go for the day. But these are all the things that people needed to know, and they still need to know, understanding that the basic advice is please stay home all the time. Just don't confuse yourself. I mean, there's even something in there when it comes to the business conditions and so on that covers the renting of an ice fishing hut, because we're coming up on that part of the season, and that's okay to rent an ice fishing hut as long as you only go with members of your own family. Okay. So, when people were complaining that I was asking questions about clarification, I think they were fair, responsible questions to ask, because I think people worry, individual people worry, the police worry, and then there's other people worry. If you're that mom that needs to be picked up by your daughter or son to go to a medical appointment, you were worried about that.
I think these are good questions because everyone had these questions and we were being flooded in our newsroom with the exact ones that you did ask. So thank you for some clarification there. With that, though, would it mean that there would be more enforcement? So some officers deployed in other areas to be able to make this happen?
Well, I will just tell you that we just got these last night. Now, what's going to happen is we have our command table, as we call it, in the morning, which has been managing this pandemic from day one for months now. We have a meeting. We get the advice of the enforcement people because, in the end, it's their decision. Our police and bylaw people use their own discretion to enforce the law and when they enforce it and how they enforce it. They're not, they don't take direction from politicians. So we will get their strategy sometime today because they've just got the regulations last night, which is the point I was making. And they will decide what to do. I think that, I don't think they're going to be sort of combing the streets looking for anybody walking down the sidewalk and say, aha, are you going to get a prescription or going to pick up food? I think they're going to be looking in particular for blatant examples of noncompliance. But we'll see. They make that decision. They will discuss that with us today, and they will now at least know what it is they're trying to enforce, which was the point. They needed to know what they're trying to enforce before they could actually begin to develop a strategy to enforce it.
We are live outside where you are right now, Nathan Phillips Square. We're taking a look at the beautiful ice rink there. A lot of people have been taking advantage of the outdoor facilities like skating rinks that are available to Torontonians right now. Do you see a change in the protocol at all right now? I'll be honest with you. I've tried to book to try to, get exercise or do something, and it's fairly hard to do. But there has been a bit of criticism on, one, the process, but two, the idea that you can still do something like that, which some people would see as recreation versus exercise. So a little bit of a blurred line there when it comes to what you're allowed to do for essential. So your take on some of the outdoor facilities in Toronto, and if everything's going to stay as is?
Well, the regulation specifically says that if a recreational facility, an outdoor recreational facility, is entitled to stay open, which skating rinks are, they've always been allowed to be open, obviously, and we put in place a series of safety rules that involve making a reservation, which, by the way, I know sometimes it can be hard because there's so many people who want to go, but we have made more than 400,000 of those reservations and people have gone skating. So now the decision we have to make on advice of our medical officer of health is whether, given that the provincial regulations seem to say, yes, a skating rink can remain open, are the rules that are in place adequate to protect safety? I think they were from the beginning, because we only allow 25 people at a time and all that. And the second thing then will be, about the optics of people being allowed to go skating when the default position is to say, please stay home. Same with tobogganing, which we're showing right here on the BT screen now. So look, these are the discussions we have to have today. But I will just tell you, the provincial regulation does not call for the closing of skating rinks, nor does it call for the closing of tobogganing hills, while, as you know, ski hills are closed. So that part really didn't change very much, and we just have to re-examine that. If I was guessing based on the discussions that happened yesterday, it might default in favor of them staying open because the province has, concluded that if it's open, it's open. But we'll have to have another look at it just to make sure that it's safe and that it's consistent with what we're trying to achieve here. All
right, Mayor Tory, as always, we appreciate your time on this. We look forward to next week. But before we let you go, you know what time it is, right?
Well,
We're bringing you
Time!